Hey, let's talk about inflation and deflation for a little bit. Inflation is a general increase in prices. In a period of inflation, as prices rise, the same amount of money buys less. Inflation reduces people's purchasing power, their ability to buy goods and services. If things become more expensive, people can only buy less of them. To track information or to track inflation, economists use a price index. That's a measurement that shows how the average price of a standard group of goods changes over time. A price index will just take a big group of things and they'll look at it every month to see if the price is going up. The best known index is the Consumer Price Index. The CPI measures the prices of a market basket. A market basket is a representative collection of goods and services used by a typical city consumer. Here's the math. The market basket cost $200 during the base period, and now it's $360. So the formula is the updated cost over the base cost times 100 equals your CPI. So 360 over 200 times 100 equals 180. That means the CPI is now 180. So economists calculate the change in the CPI from year to year to determine the inflation rate, or the percentage change in prices over time. So if you have year A, your CPI for year A was 229.6. The following year, it was the year before, it was 224.9. So you take year A minus year B divided by year B, multiply it by 100. 4.7 over 224.9 equals 0.0209 times 100, 2.1. So you have an inflation rate of 2.1%. So why do we have inflation? Well, economists think that there's three different reasons why inflation begins. First, the quantity theory states that if there's too much money in the economy, it leads to inflation. If the Fed has too much money out there because they have bought bonds, when they buy a bond, that money goes out into the economy through loans, right? So if there's too much money in the economy, the Fed will sell their bonds back to get that cash, put it in the Fed, actually the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, I believe, and that money sits there. So it's not in the economy. It can't be loaned out. So that's why the Fed is always doing those open market operations to figure out whether they need to put more money into circulation or less money. But if there's too much money out there, one theory says that that will cause inflation. Another theory is that inflation occurs when the demands for goods and services exceeds existing supplies. So if I open the only restaurant in town and it's really good food and I'm charging $9 for a plate of pasta, then I charge 10, and my sales don't go down, I'll charge 11 if my sales don't go down because there's no other game in town. Eventually, if I start charging too much, my sales will go down. So I'm always looking for the price where the demand and the supply will cross, will reach that equilibrium price. So if the demand for goods and services exceeds existing supplies, that's another thing that could cause inflation. A third theory states that inflation occurs when producers raise prices in order to meet increased costs of labor or raw materials. This situation can lead to a wage price spiral, which occurs when increases in one type of prices can cause other prices to rise. If you look at this is a good example. Amgro fertilizer employees win a wage increase. So the workers at this fertilizer plant get a wage increase. To pay for the wage increase, Amgro has to raise the price of its products. Okay, the rising cost of Amgro products leads to rising costs for the farmers who are buying the fertilizer. In response to rising prices, the farmers raise their prices. So when those workers go to buy their fruits and vegetables, it costs more. So due to the rising food prices, workers demand higher wages back in many industries. Typically, when unemployment falls to very low levels, inflation tends to increase. The supply of available workers shrinks, and employers have to offer higher wages to attract workers. Right now, our country's at historic low unemployment rates, and our wages have been slowly coming up. But if you go out to the Galleria and you see all those help wanted signs, and if you can sell yourself as an excellent employee, you're going to be able to negotiate a higher hourly rate or a higher wage. And if they have to pay you a higher wage, how are they going to make their money? They being your employer, they're going to raise the prices on their goods or service. So low unemployment can lead to inflation as well. Inflation is especially hard on people living on a fixed income, such as Social Security payments, which does not rise as other wages and prices rise. So we've talked before about a pension. When I retire, I get a pension. Say I get $40,000 a year for my pension. Okay. Well, if inflation increases by 3% every year, after 20 years, everything's going to cost 60% more. Right? So my car payment that was $500 is now $800, we'll say. But my wages, my fixed income, my pension, that doesn't increase as inflation increases. In the early 200s, the economy had a period of slow growth, and some economists predicted a period of deflation or a sustained drop in the price level. But the economy recovered and inflation remained low. Here are some questions for the test study for.